Before we begin, I want you to do something most people never do. Forget everything you've been told about money. Just for the next few minutes, keep an open mind, because by the end of this story, you may realize that the biggest obstacle to building wealth was never your paycheck. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning. You reach for your phone, still half asleep, and notice a notification from your bank. You open the app. Your balance has changed overnight. $10 million. No lottery, no inheritance, no mysterious investor. Just one number quietly sitting on your screen. Now ask yourself one question. Would you still have that money 10 years from today? Most people answer that question without hesitation. Of course I would. But history tells a very different story. Again and again, people have made fortunes, only to watch them disappear. Not because they weren't smart, not because they were unlucky, but because they never learned the difference between earning money and building wealth. And that's where our story begins. Meet Ethan, 31 years old, a reliable job, a steady paycheck, a comfortable apartment. From the outside, his life looks successful, but appearances have a way of hiding uncomfortable truths. Every 2 weeks, Ethan's paycheck arrived. Every 2 weeks, he promised himself this time would be different. And every month, somehow, the money disappeared faster than he could explain. He wasn't irresponsible. He wasn't lazy. He simply believed a lie that millions of people believe every single day. A lie so common, it almost sounds like common sense, that if you earn more, you'll automatically become wealthy. He had no idea that this belief would quietly cost him years of his life. And tomorrow morning, one unexpected conversation would change everything. The next morning, Ethan would make a decision so ordinary that almost everyone watching this video has made it before. The difference is, he was about to discover its true cost. Monday morning, Ethan walked into the office just like every other day, coffee in one hand, laptop in the other. Nothing felt unusual. But by the end of the week, he would make a decision that millions of people make every single day. And almost none of them realize how expensive it really is. Friday finally arrived. At exactly 5:17 p.m., his phone vibrated. Direct deposit received. His paycheck had arrived. For a moment, everything felt possible. He opened his banking app, smiled, and started making plans. A new phone he'd been looking at for months, dinner at one of the city's most popular restaurants, a designer jacket he didn't actually need, but convinced himself he had earned. And to Ethan, every purchase felt completely reasonable. After all, isn't that what money is for? But here's the uncomfortable truth. The biggest financial mistakes almost never feel like mistakes. They feel like rewards. 2 weeks later, Ethan checked his account again. The excitement was gone. Most of his paycheck was gone too. He stared at the screen, confused. Where does it all go? The answer wasn't hidden in his bank account. It was hidden in his habits. Every time he earned more, he found a new reason to spend more. Financial experts call this lifestyle inflation. And it's one of the quietest traps in modern life. The more money you make, the more expensive your life becomes. Until one day, you realize your income has grown, but your freedom never did. The next morning, Ethan met someone who had been quietly wealthy for over 30 years. What that man said in the next 5 minutes would completely change the way Ethan thought about money forever. The next morning, Ethan decided to clear his mind with a walk through the park. He wasn't looking for answers, but sometimes the answers find you first. An older man was sitting alone on a wooden bench, feeding the birds. As Ethan walked past, the man looked up and smiled. "You look like someone who's carrying more than a backpack," he said. Ethan laughed. "I'm carrying bills." The old man smiled again. "No, you're carrying the wrong definition of money." That sentence stopped Ethan in his tracks. Curious, he sat down beside him. Without saying another word, the old man reached into his wallet and pulled out a single $1 bill. He placed it on the bench between them. "Tell me," he said, "what do you see?" Ethan shrugged. $1. The old man nodded. "That's exactly how most people see it. But I see something different. I see a tiny employee. An employee that can either disappear forever or spend the rest of its life working for me." Ethan frowned. The old man continued. "Most people work for money. The wealthy teach money to work for them. Every dollar you spend is an employee you fired. Every dollar you invest is an employee you hired. Now imagine doing that for 20 years. For the first time, Ethan wasn't thinking about buying more things. He was thinking about building something that could outlast him. And that single shift in perspective was worth more than any raise he'd ever received. Then the old man asked Ethan one final question. "If your paycheck stopped tomorrow, how long would your money keep working for you?" Ethan didn't have an answer, but he knew he needed one. The old man stood up and looked across the lake. "Let me show you the mistake almost everyone makes," he said. He picked up 2 empty buckets and placed them on the ground. "Imagine this bucket is your income, and this one is your wealth." Ethan nodded. The old man poured water into the first bucket, but there was a small hole at the bottom. No matter how much water he added, it kept leaking out. "This is how most people live," he said. "They focus on pouring in more, instead of fixing what's leaking out." Then he pointed to the second bucket. This one had no holes. Every drop stayed inside. "Real wealth isn't built by earning more," he said. "It's built by keeping more and giving every dollar a purpose." Ethan stayed silent. He thought about every raise he'd ever celebrated, every impulse purchase, every time he told himself, "I'll start saving next month." The old man smiled. "The people you call wealthy don't think differently because they have more money. They have more money because they learn to think differently. They buy assets before liabilities. They invest before they upgrade. And they understand one simple truth. Money is a terrible master, but an incredible servant." At that moment, Ethan stopped asking, "How can I make more money?" and started asking, "How can every dollar I earn create another dollar?" That single question changed the direction of his future. 1 year later, Ethan wasn't making a lot more money, but something incredible had changed. For the first time in his life, his money had started working harder than he was. A year later, Ethan's paycheck hadn't doubled. He hadn't won the lottery. He hadn't built a billion-dollar company. From the outside, his life looked almost exactly the same. But beneath the surface, everything had changed. He stopped buying things to impress people who barely noticed. Instead, every paycheck had a purpose before it even reached his account. One part paid his bills, one part built his future, and one part stayed untouched, quietly growing month after month. At first, the progress felt invisible. There were no dramatic headlines, no overnight success, just small decisions, repeated with discipline. And that's the part most people never see. Wealth is usually built in silence, long before anyone calls you successful. Months turned into a year. The investments he once thought were too small began producing returns. The emergency fund he once ignored gave him confidence instead of fear. For the first time, missing one paycheck no longer felt like a disaster. He wasn't rich, but he was becoming free. And maybe that's the real definition of wealth, not owning everything you want, but no longer being controlled by money. As Ethan walked past the same electronics store where he had once bought things out of impulse, he smiled. Not because he couldn't afford them, but because he no longer needed them to feel successful. That was the moment he realized the greatest investment he had ever made wasn't in the stock market. It was in changing the way he thought. Years later, Ethan met the same old man again. This time, the old man asked only one question. "So, who's working for whom now? You or your money?" 5 years later, Ethan returned to the same park, the same bench, the same lake. Only one thing had changed. Him. He wasn't driving a supercar. He wasn't wearing a luxury watch. And he wasn't pretending to be successful. Because real wealth rarely needs to announce itself. As he sat down, He noticed the old man walking toward him. The mentor smiled. "You look different," he said. Ethan smiled back. "I finally understand." The old man sat beside him. "Then tell me, who's working for whom now?" Ethan looked across the water before answering. "For years, I worked for money. Now, my money works for me." The old man nodded. That's the moment the game changes. Most people spend their lives chasing a bigger paycheck. Very few spend their lives building a system that keeps paying them back. And that's why wealth isn't measured by what you buy. It's measured by the freedom you keep. As the sun began to set, Ethan realized something he wished he'd learned years earlier. Money doesn't change who you are. It reveals the habits you've been practicing all along. If your habits create freedom, money expands that freedom. If your habits create stress, more money simply makes the stress more expensive. The truth is, building wealth isn't one big decision. It's hundreds of small decisions, repeated when nobody is watching. Every paycheck is a choice. Every purchase is a vote for the future you're creating. And every day you delay learning about money is another day someone else is putting their money to work while yours sits still. So the question was never, how much money do you make? The real question is, if your paycheck stopped tomorrow, would your money continue working for you? Because the people who truly become wealthy don't just earn more. They learn to think differently. And maybe that's where your story begins. One decision can change the next 10 years of your life. Maybe watching this video was yours. If you want stories that change the way you think, not just the way you feel, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next documentary.